Yo, what's going on guys, it's Cryptic TMG and I'm back with a brand new video, and this time it's the AOR GT3 Elite Championship Season 10 Round 7, and this is a 90-minute race, reverse grid, so there's going to be no qualifying. And how it works is that if you've missed any of the last five races, I believe, or you failed to finish any of the 5 races, then the reverse grid puts you towards the back. So with me and CJ not actually missing any of the races this season or failing to finish, it actually promoted us up the grid to 4th and 5th, I believe. So a lot of people obviously have missed races in the last 5-6 races, so yeah, we're not actually starting too far back, so that sort of helps our crest a little bit more. Catalonia, a track that I like quite a lot, and in practice their pace was pretty good, so yeah, let's see how we do. So here we are coming towards the end of the formation lap, and we're behind Jam and Scold and also Thomas Ethan on pole position. So those are the other guys who finished every single race and haven't missed a race. You can see CJ behind me, so we've started quite high up for the two of us, and obviously with us first and second in the championship, it's not too bad. And I think there Thomas Ethan has some sort of wheel problem, some sort of wheel glitch, and that sort of promotes us up into 3rd position now. Obviously he's going to have to start all the way at the back, which is what happened to Carl, but Carl didn't go to the back at Bruno, and he actually got a 20-second time penalty for that. So yeah, big friend that ended up winning the Bruno race. So just a little bit of results to change there, but anyway, back to this race now, up into 3rd position. So this has made it even better for us, and so the other quick guys, a lot of them are towards the back because they have missed a race as well. And also this was a track where all the cars were pretty quick, so it's going to be interesting, especially CJ right behind me. See what kind of start we could get, as it's almost time to get ready to go. We're actually now in acceleration zones, so from now to the line we can go at any time as soon as Skull drops the hammer, and he does drop it, and we managed to get a good start. And I could tell at this moment that I was going to get past Jammy because I was in the slipstream of the Porsche. And to be honest, the Lambo is a little bit quicker than the Audi down the straight, despite the fact they do share the same engine, but the Lamborghini definitely more efficient and straight line speed. Up into 2nd place and straight off the start, and my thing was just to try and get into 1st place as quick as possible, try and put a car in between me and CJ, and I was hoping that Jammy could hold CJ off, but I think CJ manages to get the move done, and he's up into 3rd place, and me and Scold got a little bit of a gap now, and it was just seeing how fast Scold was, or if he wasn't fast enough, whether I could just pick him off in time and see if I could just get in 1st place and get a car between me and CJ. That was pretty much my main priority at the start of the race. At the same time I was trying to push, but I didn't want to make any mistakes because obviously it would have been so costly at this point in time, being in such a good position. You can see CJ instantly starting to gain on us now through the middle sector, and Scold had some good speed, especially on the 1st lap. His tyres seem to be really warm. I can see my rear brakes still pretty cold, but for the middle sector I really struggled to hang on to him. But at the end of the lap was where I was really going to try and ramp it up. I wanted to get that run down the straight because I knew for me to get past the Porsche I have to be sort of right underneath the rear wing because of how strong the Porsches are down the straight. You can see Scold, he's just not even messing about on the 1st lap, so it was pretty tricky to try and keep up with him. And to be honest, this chicane here makes it really hard to overtake people because they always get on the power just that little bit before you. But Skull goes a little bit wide and messes up the last corner. This gives us at least a chance to be close to him going into the 1st corner. But you can see already that we just don't have the straight line speed to do anything. We literally have to be right on his rear wing to have any chance in a straight line, but we can go a little bit late on the brakes. The Porsche does tend to struggle a little bit more on brakes, but this was probably my best sector. Sector 1 was where I was sort of pretty fast, and you can see straight away I'm able to hold a tight Porsche, which tends to do that, and we managed to get up the inside. I thought I've got to go for the maneuver. I managed to outbrake him, get down the inside, no contact, and CJ gets right behind him, and then out of nowhere CJ actually spins out of nowhere, and it was a pretty weird spin because it was sort of after the braking phase, the braking and turning phase where you normally spin at that corner. So CJ, unknowing to me, he spun out, and I wasn't too sure what had happened, if he spun out, hit the wall, or whether he just spun and was able to get back going. But you can see I can't see him in my position feed on the left hand side, so Now it was just me just try and build a gap. And you can see Carl's up to 5th. Carl started in last place and he's up to 5th place already, so up to 4th place now actually. And obviously I know Carl's a very quick guy, so with him getting to the front so quickly, yeah, could not relax at all, because I know Carl's definitely someone who's going to have the pace, but managing to just open out the gap to Scold, who to be honest was showing some good pace in the Porsche, and Carl wasn't really gaining him that much at the beginning. You can see they were running sort of a steady pace, and I was only getting away from Scold at maybe 3 or 4 tenths a lap at most. But you can see now the gap's starting to open out quite a bit, and I was just able to sort of just focus on my pace. And to be honest, at this time, as I was starting to pull away from Scold more and more, I was starting to just Carl watch to see what the gap was to Carl, because I was noticing the gap between me and Carl wasn't really opening out. It was just kind of staying the same all the way through. So I was just sitting there waiting, thinking, is he going to get past Scold? How long would it take him to get past Scold? So I knew it would be quite important to build the gap while I could, and obviously when he does eventually catch up to Scold, it's probably going to take him a while to get past. The Scold had some decent pace, and obviously the Porsche was super fast down the straight. So now for me was the time to really just try and open out that gap as much as I can, give myself a little barrier, so even if anything does go wrong or I make any small mistakes or anything like that, I still have some time in my pocket. Still wasn't too sure what had happened to CJ or whereabouts CJ was, so yeah, I didn't know if he'd pitted early. But then I sort of started looking at my my telemetry and my position feeds, and I could see CJ's actually already a lap down. I've already lapped him, so he must have had a pretty big incident at the start when he spun. I think he actually got collected by a couple of cars and had a crazy amount of damage and ended up just in the pits. And yeah, so he's actually a lap down at the moment. So our main championship rival is pretty much right at the back of the field in 14th place, and yeah, we're winning the race. So as it stands now, we're going to take quite a big chunk out of his lead in the championship, but obviously that's if we can convert it into a victory. But yeah, it was definitely it was a lot, can I say, not easier, but it was a lot more straightforward than what I thought the race would be. I actually changed the setup slightly just before the race, because I had a setup where it was probably a lot faster when I was in clear air, but when I was behind people the car was just lethal. So I ended up putting on more downforce probably than I needed. I wasn't expecting to get to the front or into first place quite so quickly, and obviously with Thomas Ethan at the start having some sort of error, not sure if it was with his wheel or whether he got like a blue screen or something like that. With him having an error, it put us up to 3rd place at the start, and then we managed to get past Jam straight away. Because we was in the slipstream of Scold, it made it a lot easier, only having to follow one car. I'm able to get into 1st place on the 2nd lap of the race, so it wasn't too bad. And in hindsight, the other setup probably would have made me quite a bit quicker, because I was quicker with the other setup, but this setup was definitely a lot more safe, and it allowed me to follow other cars without the back end stepping out at every turn. So yeah, I guess it was nice and stable. I didn't really feel like I was going to drop it anywhere, and it was just about just keep pushing. Obviously you can see Carl's time on the left hand side, the time fluctuating between 11 and 12 seconds, so I knew Carl had pretty similar pace to us. Also you can see Archo as well in 5th place, EPR Archo, he's in 5th place, also in a Lamborghini, and he had pretty strong pace as well. So yeah, all the people that I felt that were most dangerous probably in this race, and they were quite far back early on, so it gave me quite a big buffer, quite a lot of time to decide when I wanted to pit and stuff like that. So normally in races I do normally pit quite early, but with me leading the race, having quite a substantial lead at the moment in time, I can sort of wait to see what everybody else around me does and make sure when I do pit that I don't come out in traffic. So yeah, it's not too bad. Now it's just all about not making a mistake as we come up to lap Infinity, who's had some sort of incident. You can see the damage on the front of his Porsche, and we managed to get past him pretty quickly. He more than likely having to go into the pit because it looked like some serious damage on his car there. So as we're on lap 15, and I'm just in the zone at the moment, just trying to just stay focused. As I said, looking every now and then to see how Carl's getting on up against Scold. So you can see now the gap between me and Carl's not opening, but the gap between him and Scold is closing down. So he's pretty much lapping exact same pace as us at this moment in time, and he's catching Scold pretty quickly now. So I knew it wasn't going to be too long before he's right on the back of him, and probably when you get into a battle with somebody, you end up losing time. So I was banking on him losing sort of 2-3 seconds and then having an even bigger advantage, which just makes my race a lot more comfortable. Lap 15 out of a 52 race. Remember, this is a 90-minute race, so a little bit more time for people to catch you up and stuff like that. So yeah, you can't relax. You don't know who's pitted and who hasn't pitted. Someone could have pitted and already made their stop, and I'm thinking that I've got the race in the bag. So yeah, it's it's one of them ones where you just got to stay focused, and we end up lapping Jammy. I'm not too sure if he pitted, but afterwards when I watched the race back, I think it was Jam that actually hit CJ after CJ had spun it, so he got a substantial amount of damage also, and yeah, just pretty much ruined their race. So now Jam is down in 12th place, already a lap down, lap 19 in the race, but he has made his pit stop, so he doesn't have to pit again. So I'm sure he'll climb back up the order, and for me it's just push now, because obviously now I can see Carl is right on the back of Scold, only about 3 or 4 tenths behind. So yeah, now was the time to sort of open up the gap, see how big I could get the gap before Carl gets into second place, if he could get into second place, and then I'll know he's got free air, because obviously he started in last place, so he probably hasn't had that much free air yet in the race, because obviously on this game dirty air is quite a factor, especially for me. In dirty air I just cannot seem to handle the car in the way that I like. It just seems to be all over the place. Back end steps out, front end washes away. It's just crazy. But yeah, now for first time I think I've properly led a race this season. Like just led from the front, and it is obviously a lot more comfortable. You can just judge the pace and push when you need to. So yeah, probably yeah, first time I've properly led, apart from Donington. I think Donington I led the race, and I was pretty comfortable until I just made the wrong decision at the pit stops. But now this is a much more comfortable position. You can see Carl has managed to get up into second place now, but 15 seconds, so he lost about 3 seconds in that period where he was battling Scold, and that's just made it easier for me. Now we're not too far away from being halfway through the race, and now for me it was sort of, my thing was, well, I'm not going to let the gap get below 13 seconds, so every time the gap really closes down, I'm just going to increase my pace. I could tell that our pace was pretty similar, so I knew I had time in hand enough to do that, and I wasn't pushing overly hard. I just didn't want to make a mistake and sort of give Carl the incentive to sort of really start putting the lap times in, because if I had made a mistake and the gap would have went to about 6 seconds or something, then as someone who's chasing, you just get that feeling of you can hunt someone down. I know that happens for me, and I know for Carl, he's definitely someone who, once he gets the sniff of blood, then he's definitely going to be out trying to catch you down. So yeah, it was pretty much just don't make a mistake, keep it clean, and just bring it home at this point. Even though there's a long way to go, I know with my pace and the guy's pace around me is not too dissimilar, so for him to catch me now, he's gonna have to be quite a lot quicker. So I knew pretty much there wasn't much chance of him catching me if I just keep it on the island. But coming around now, we're coming up to AA Medj. I can't figure out how you say his name, but I just call him Medj. That's what I call him. But we're catching up to him now. He's in a Lamborghini also, and yeah, it was just hoping that I didn't get into any incidents. He just sort of half drops it on the curb in front of me, but luckily we were far enough back to avoid it. And sometimes, you know, when you're in the lead, it can get it can get almost boring, and you start to like lose focus. And yeah, sometimes when you have things happen right in front of you, it kind of wakes you up a little bit, because you're in the lead. You know that you should pretty much have the race won, barring any wheel glitches or spins, and it's very easy to lose focus. Very easy to lose focus. And you can see Archer now, who is up into third place, and you can remember he was about 22 seconds behind us, so he's been closing down quite a lot. Has a 1 second penalty, but he's starting to close down on Carl, who's still 14 to 15 seconds behind us. So you can see we're just sort of trading lap times. Archer has been pretty quick. Unbetold to me, he was involved in quite a lot of incidents, so he does end up getting a penalty, I believe, after this race. So I didn't really have to worry about him too much, but at the time I didn't know that, and I could see like, wow, he's taken about 5 or 6 seconds out of me since he got into 4th place. So yeah, he was going pretty quickly as well. But still, I still felt like the pace was there to respond if I really started to struggle. The only thing I wasn't sure of is how the car would react at the end of the race. A lot of time when we're racing, the car just tends to completely fall off, and if that happens, you can sort of lose 2 seconds a lap out of nowhere. Just depending on how you set your car up and how the car is after a certain amount of time. But yeah, it felt pretty good. And to be honest, in these hour-and-a-half races, my car felt pretty good. The first race we did at Indianapolis, my car felt great. Obviously I got taken out, but the car was great, and I think for that race, that was a race I definitely could have won if I didn't have the incident, because my pace in that race was pretty strong. And yeah, it seems that the races without quali, my car has just been amazing, but a lot of other times the car just feels just terrible in the race. Can't understand it. But yeah, still lap 33. And I haven't pitted yet. I'm just sort of waiting it out just to see what the guys behind do. I'll figure out I'll pit after them, so I won't get stuck behind anybody, and I won't have sort of any chance of anybody else interfering with my race, sort of thing. So I decided pretty early that I'm just gonna pit after everybody else pits, and just take it from there. But yeah, Carl now, see the gap edging just below 14 seconds now, and you can see me playing with the ABS, because I was getting a lot of like front locking, so I was flicking ABS to high and low and back to high and low when I felt like the brakes weren't responding in the way that I want to. And that is one thing about this game. It's always best to sort of make sure you've got a lot of things mapped out on your buttons. So sort of your automatic clutch, traction control, I've got my ABS mapped out, and just if your car starts handling a little bit weird, you can always just sort of change some things in the car just to sort of help you along the way. For me, at points it was definitely needed to change the ABS, because the car was just locking up so badly, and you can see the tires are starting to wear a little bit. So I put the ABS to high just to stop that locking, brake a little bit earlier, because the higher the ABS, the longer the brake distance. And yeah, it sort of sorted itself out, and when I was ready I could turn it back off again. But you see Carl now, gap almost down to 12 seconds, sort of fluctuating down the straight sort of thing. But yeah, now is the time I thought, well, I can't give him too much of an incentive, so I'm going to start pushing again, and hopefully I can open the gap back out, just so he knows there's not a race there. There's nothing on. You're pretty much racing for second place. Don't try and give him anything to sort of dig his teeth into. And you can say we still can get up on our time, which is a 44.8 at the moment. And in practice, we were, as per usual, we were about a second quicker. We were in the 43s, but we've come to the conclusion that obviously in the race, for whatever reason, there's just not the same amount of grip, or the track's green, even though it doesn't make much sense. The track should be greener in practice, because in the race there's more cars running on the track surface, so it should in theory be a lot more grippy in the race. Offline I get that there should be rubber marbles offline that maybe would make the track a lot more sketchy, but online I think it should be more grippy. but as I said, that's just something P cars have just got to figure out, I guess. But actually up on our fastest lap, so we can respond when we need to. We have got the pace when we need it. Gap still about 13 seconds, but I tend to sort of count the gap as I went over the line, because it takes sort of into account when you're slowing down for corners, or you're going to a tight corner and Carl might be on a straight. It sort of counts that time where I'll be on the brakes and he'll be flat out. So sort of I'll wait till I go over the line to check what the gap was, because that was where I could sort of keep an eye on it properly, and it's back up above 14 seconds, so it's pretty comfortable again. And you can see that gap is sort of stuck at that point. Archer now really closing in. Archer almost on the back of Carl now, has a 2-second penalty, but I knew once them guys start battling that obviously again they're probably going to lose a lot more time. So yeah, I wasn't really worried. I think Carl at this point was probably more worried about Archer behind him than he was about me in front, because obviously he knew that's a pretty big gap, and now he's probably going to have to close me down at sort of the rate of like a second a lap. So yeah, that was not going to happen. So yeah, for me, just as I said, just staying focused. I really was just time watching, man. Just time watching. Then I'd look up and left hand side just to see how CJ was getting on. See, CJ was still down in 13th place, so still hadn't managed to make his way back through the field. He must have had some more incidents and stuff like that. So yeah, it was sort of surprising for me. And at the time, I didn't actually even notice CJ was in 13th. I literally thought that he's probably spun, he's hit the wall or something like that, and he's probably pitted and making his way back through the field. So I was still looking down on the left hand side, waiting to see his name in sort of the top 6 or 7. I didn't actually notice at the time. I was just too focused on directly on what Carl was doing. But obviously after the race, and after I watched the highlight video or the live stream on Apex Online Racing on YouTube, then I obviously saw the incidents that he got into, and yeah, it was I was a lot more comfortable afterwards, obviously, in knowing that he had had so many incidents, compared to the fact I thought he was ringing it around the track trying to catch me up, or trying to get there a massive undercut. So yeah, I still knew that he'd have a lot of cars to sort of overtake. So yeah, it's not as easy to overtake in this game as probably on P-Cars 1. P-Cars 1, if you were faster, you caught someone, you were getting past, that was it. In this game, you sort of got the dirty air. It's just trying to get on the power early when you're behind someone. The car just seems to get a little bit sketchy. You really got to work for it. And with not having the fastest car down the straight, it can be a struggle. We sort of got to get the moves done on the brakes a lot of the time, and that's pretty much where the advantage lies with us, is probably on the brakes. But you see lap 41 and still pushing on, open out the gap to Carl to a good 16 seconds now, and Archer jumps in the pit, so he's going to try and get the undercut on Carl and then try and pull away by 3 seconds, because obviously he has a 3-second penalty. So I knew at this point that Carl was definitely going to come in on the next lap to cover that off. So it was almost time to pit. Obviously we can't pit right at the end. We have to pit 5 laps before the end of the race for whatever reason. But I knew Carl was definitely about to cover that move off, and I was just ready to I was going to pit a lap later than Carl, just so I just didn't come out behind anybody or just anything like that. Just making sure I was just nice and stayed in clean air and didn't sort of risk anything. And obviously Archer was going to try and get that jump on Carl. Carl would have had to push on this lap, because Archer obviously definitely has some speed in there. So Carl would have had to be pushing on this lap, and I was sort of just sitting back waiting to see what happened. I knew at this stage, for me, I probably had the race won without any sort of incident. So I was just sitting back to see what was going to happen, to be honest. And sometimes this is where you can make a mistake if you just lose focus too much. But this is a track I've done, honestly, so many laps around, so many GT3 tests, so many BOP tests. It's just probably my most used track on P cars. So I've always been comfortable around Catalonia, and 10 laps to go just wasn't too far away. So you can see me now just checking my aero damage, because I could see that I had 1 damage on the engine, and I didn't want to go into the pits and sit in the pits for longer than I needed to, because I could have ended up with an extra 7 seconds added to my pit stop. So you see now I've gone to pit in, and I think Carl made his pit stop and he still came out just ahead of Archer. He's still only about 3 tenths ahead. So you can see how much time they've lost in the pit stop. They've gone from sort of 15 seconds behind to 52, so it's quite a long pit stop. It's about 9 laps worth of fuel, I believe we took on, or I took on. So yeah, a long pit lane as well, and you're just going so slow, and you always feel like, oh, come on, just speed up. But obviously with the guys having made their pit stop already as well, it wasn't really much I could do apart from just make sure I was cleaning the pits and didn't stall or didn't do anything stupid. So we were making our pit stop and decided not to take tyres, and the reason why I was changing the aero and stuff like that, I was making it so they only fix aero damage. I didn't want them to fix the engine because it just would have added time to the pit stop. So pit stop not too long, 10.7 seconds, so it was not too long of a pit stop, pretty clean. And I was just looking to see how much they gained or how much they lost to me in the pits, and yeah, it just didn't seem too bad. And obviously coming out in clear air, been in clear air since the 2nd lap of the race, so obviously it's been a very comfortable race. Kind of boring compared to what I normally go through in a race, but yeah, you can see the gap is still around the 15-second mark, so haven't really lost any time. And especially with these guys, like you can see Archer was just a 10th behind Carl, so they're definitely going to be battling in no time. For me now, it's just about bringing it home and making sure I'm not making any silly mistakes. But at the moment we've just managed a nice clean race, no penalties, nothing like that, and it's a lot easier to sort of focus on not track extending or picking up penalties or making mistakes when you're just out in front with clear air and a gap behind you where you're comfortable. It's so much easier. But again, it's about getting to the front in the other races, sort of getting them pole positions and leading out from the front a lot more comfortable, I would say, than having to sort of come from behind, battle through the pack. But obviously if you're leading and you've got everyone right behind you, then it's sort of what do you do on strategy, because anyone can undercut you at any time. So obviously you always want to have sort of a bit of a gap to the cars behind. But as you can see, we're actually going faster than our fastest lap at the moment, so we've still got the pace in there. We're still not got any dramas, we're all good. Obviously just now counting the laps to the end, and in my head I'm starting to thinking, please don't give me any wheel bugs, please. I don't need any wheel bugs at this point, because I remember I was at last season at Long Beach. I had a similar lead, everything was going all good, and yeah, I had 2 wheel bugs in the space of a lap and a half that really just, it ended up putting me almost a lap down, or I think I was a lap down, I'm not too sure. So we went from winning the race by about 14 seconds to being a lap down just because my wheel wanted to malfunction. And obviously we had it again last season at places like Fuji. I had it this season at the first race of the season where I would have picked up a podium position. So yeah, sometimes you lose a lot of championship points just by things that are out of your control, and I was just hoping that that wasn't going to be the case today. But I had a big enough gap. As you can see, Archer has actually managed to get past Carl, and with them battling, they've dropped them back to about 18 seconds. So obviously even more comfortable for me now at just 5 laps to go, and yeah, just gonna pretty much just push on. You can see we almost get ourselves into a spin there. Back end just stepped out a little bit, and we got on the curb and made it slide even more. Coming up to lap the Medj, or AA Medj, and Matty D, I believe. So they were actually battling, and if I couldn't catch them, I wasn't even going to bother. I would have just left them to battle. But obviously, as soon as I get too close, they're going to start getting blue flags and stuff like that. And yeah, obviously, it's just going to go to one side and let me through. But I wasn't too bothered as long as Archer didn't start taking sort of a mad amount of time out of me. I was prepared to just let these guys battle, but I could see Matty seemed to be getting away a little bit. So yeah, but obviously with Archer, with that 3-second penalty, he's looking to really pull away from Carl. You can see he's almost got that 3-second gap now. Carl, I'm not too sure what happened to his car, but maybe had a bit of damage, or his car started to sort of fall off, which is something I've mentioned before. The car sometimes does tend to just fall off the cliff, back like the old F1 2012, and the tyres used to go off and then the cars were just like 2 seconds lap slower. Sort of, you can get that feeling sometimes, and yeah, it's pretty annoying. But yeah, managed to lap Medj. He lets us through at the hairpin. But even now, to be honest, the car is starting to get a little bit more difficult to drive. I could definitely notice the difference. The car was starting to just not slow down in time. It didn't matter what I did with the brakes, and it was just sketchy. I could feel the front end oversteering. I just think it was more of a tyre wear issue. The front left obviously wearing down quickly. You can see Medj, he's really managed to keep up with us through that section. So yeah, you can tell we were struggling for pace a little bit. 1.6 seconds down on our fastest lap. That tells you everything you need to know. But obviously I was looking at Carl's times and I thought, well, he must be having similar struggles to me, because he's not actually gaining at the minute. I'm actually still pulling away. But you can see the back end stepping out for turn 1, having to catch the car mid corner, and yeah, you can tell when your car just changes on you. And for this game, sometimes it's really random. Like the lap before this, I was up on my fastest lap, and a couple of laps later the car is just starting to kill me. So it's just one of them random things that just happens in P cars sometimes, with the way the car just tends to feel from nowhere. There's just no warning to it whatsoever. But yeah, just 3 laps to go, or 2 laps to go plus the one that we're on, and pretty much it's a wrap. And I'm just gonna sort of focus on putting this race to bed. And I wasn't even working out the championship points this moment in time. I wasn't even thinking about the championship. I was just more eager just to get a win under my belt, a win that I thought I could have had at various points of the season this season, but for whatever reason never happened. I definitely thought Rapuna was one that I could have won. I got pole position, but I spun so many times in that race, and because I was always in traffic, I never really got to show my pace, so that's pretty annoying. Indianapolis definitely, I think, was a race that I could have won, especially with the crash that I had at the beginning, and had like a 22 pit stop at the beginning, and I still managed to catch up with the leaders like sort of 40 laps into that race. But obviously I had to pit again because I just didn't have enough fuel. So that was a race I thought I could have won. And yeah, and Donington, where I just threw it all away, going on the wrong, well, staying on the dry tyres on a wet track, and CJ getting me at the second to last corner. So that was another one that got away. And obviously this one we're winning now, so we haven't taken all our opportunities in this championship so far. But for this race, obviously with CJ having so much troubles, and obviously we're now on the last lap, me winning the race, this finally we seem as if we're going to take an opportunity. Hopefully I don't have any wheel bugs or any stupid mistakes. And I can tell you right now, in the last lap, the car was pretty sketchy, man. It was getting crazy. I was starting to think, wow, this car is actually trying to kill me. You can see, look how much Archer and Carl have actually closed down on me in the last few laps, almost 4 seconds. So yeah, when I was saying the car just literally dropped off a cliff, I'm so lucky I had that gap in the beginning, because if I didn't, I would have been struggling at the end. You can see now we're 4 tenths down in our time, and I wasn't like purposely just you know, just completely just gone off the pace and just crawling around. I was still trying to keep a decent pace, but the car was just sketchy into corners. I couldn't trust it, so I had to slow down because I would end up binning it. You can see even into that hairpin, the back end wants to come around first, which tends to be what happens for me. If the car's not feeling right, it's when the back end wants to enter the corner before the front end, and that's like the worst feeling for me. I like a planted rear end on the car, and if it's not, then yeah, I'm gonna struggle. You see us coming into the last chicane, just struggling to get the car turned, really struggling, but you see now the gap down to about 10 seconds. It's crazy. We actually slow down to let Matty go past, see if he wanted to do another lap, but he lets me celebrate, and we managed to finally win another race in AOR. And yeah, it was a long time coming. Me not knowing at this point in time CJ's completely had a stinker, so yeah, I was just happy to win the race. I wasn't thinking about no championship points, I wasn't thinking about anything like that. Just pretty much just happy to win the race. I'm gonna bust out some cheeky donuts right now, you know what I'm saying? It was about time, got that dub. Archer comes across the line, Carl comes across the line, Lamborghini 1, 2, 3, I think. But as I said, Archer does end up getting a penalty, and I saw CJ stop right by him, and I thought, did CJ get top 5? Did he finish in the top 5? And then yeah, afterwards when the results came up, you can see that I was looking, I was like, wow, CJ didn't even finish in the top 10. That's crazy. Prantl got a 51 second penny. I'm not too sure how I managed to do that, but yeah, that was the results, and yeah, finally managed to get a good win. But check out my next video, which will be at Hockenheim for the next round of AOR GT3 Elite. Cryptic TMG, peace.